Hey, 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 and we're live. And I'm super excited that you've joined me today. I am here with Cheryl Becker, and she is the president of Create Stitches. And I was really excited when I heard about this concept because when I grew up, I was going to be a seamstress. And I didn't. I turned into a cleaning lady instead. I mean, like, not quite my dream, but Cheryl is living my dream. And I've got so many questions. So back in high school, when I was just telling this to Cheryl before I started this call. But when I was back in high school, I created my own clothing. And then when I would go to high school for the 1 year that I went to high school, because I was homeschooled all the other years, but the 1 year that I went, there were students that would buy or barter my clothing because I had one of a kind clothing. And so I got some really nice designer clothing because I got their clothes and they got mine. So it was kind of a win-win. And then I moved out into the real world and I got a job and I stopped sewing and I miss it so much. But then here's Cheryl. And not only is she a seamstress, but she's got 5 kids. So I want to know, how do you stay clutter-free and how do you stay organized and run a business and a household and all the things? So please help me welcome Cheryl Becker. Hi, and how are you today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm amazing. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get to this point in your life? This is an exciting story.
Yeah, it started actually really interesting. My husband was trying to find different ways that we could just make some money, and he put this up on Etsy that he had a shirt pattern for sale. And we hadn't created it yet. It wasn't made, but he was going to see if it would actually sell. And it did. And so it just kind of started from there. And I was like, hey, like, this isn't your territory. This is mine. Like, I'm the one sewing around here. So I kind of took over and started designing dresses because that's what I wear all the time. And it's hard to find dress patterns that, I don't know, that just suit what I'm looking for. Right. So yeah, it just kind of took off from there.
So I got to unpack that all the way back to the beginning. So you sew, and your husband said, now you're going to sell patterns on Etsy. And so he sold a pattern for a pattern that didn't exist yet.
Yeah, and so he put it out there as, okay, this isn't made yet, but he was seeing if anybody would actually buy it, and there's a couple people that did. So then we got it designed.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm guessing he's into marketing or sales or internet or
yeah,
something.
yeah, down that line. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So does he run his own business or he just works out of the house or what?
yeah. He has his own business.
So he
He's
has his own business and you have your own business
yes,
and you have 5 kids.
yes.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Okay, so we got to back up just a little bit. All right, so now first tell us about how the setup is because you have 5 kids and you're running a business and your husband is running a business, and how does that all work?
Yeah.
And
I
and I
guess
ask I ask because that's a lot of time management. It's obvious that you're really organized with your time. And so you didn't just wake up and like poof, here you are. You had to do some steps to get here.
yeah, and it kind of evolved or whatever. It kind of was just we didn't have this big long range plan or anything. It just kind of kept growing, right? So, um, well, our oldest is 14. So that makes quite a difference that we have like older children. We don't have any babies anymore. And so they help out a lot around the house, doing dishes and cleaning and tidying up after themselves and things like that. So that, I think if it wasn't for that, it probably wouldn't work very well.
And was it always that way? Or did you decide one day like, hey, nobody's helping out around here. We need to get the kids involved in cleaning up?
No, we've always tried to, yeah, get them involved. Yeah, it's good. Like otherwise, they're just kind of banging off the walls or whatever because they are too bored.
Well, and I'm from a large family as well. And so from the very time I was really, really small, and mom just kept having kids after kids after kids. And so from the very beginning, can you run go get me that diaper? Can you run go get me a washcloth? Can you help me here? Can you help me there? And so she wasn't afraid to ask us to help. And so we grew up thinking, oh, kids are just supposed to be helping out around the house. But did you know that is not the norm?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Lots of kids don't help out around the house. So I love the
Mhm.
fact that your family does. And so I'm guessing that's your family, what do you call it? The compass of your family is you all help each other and you're all part of the same, um, the family lives here, the family that lives together and stays together and works together, stays
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, and so now you wear dresses every day. And
Yeah.
there weren't patterns that were fitting into your, liking, and so you decided to create your own specialty patterns then, is that right?
Mhm. Yes, yeah.
Okay, so tell me about that. Like, how do you go from like, "Hey, I just don't like what I'm seeing," to, "I'm gonna create my own designer patterns?" Like, where did you get the skills? How did you know?
I don't know, I guess, like, I love creating stuff, like, I before I did this, I would just, I'd maybe have a base pattern, but I would just change it up and add different things to it and stuff, so that's always been fun to me, but I do like to have, like, a pattern I can just cut it out and sew it, and I don't have to come up with something different necessarily. Um, so yeah, I would just look around on, Pinterest or different places like that and just see the different designs and say, "Hey, that would be cool to have one like that." And so we hired a drafter to draft the patterns for us. So I don't actually draw them up. I just do the fun part of saying, "Hey, I want it to look like this."
Mhm.
And yeah, so then she draws that up for me and we test it out, make sure it's gonna turn out right, and yeah, then start selling it.
So when you say you test it out, what does that mean?
Well, just so like actually cut out the dress and sew it up and just make sure um that it's got the right proportions or that it's going to turn out how I had imagined.
And so do you try it cutting it out and making it with a different couple different kinds of fabrics, or do you decide that, "Oh, this is just best suited for this one type of fabric," or how does that work?
Yeah, I would tell the drafter that it's meant for this type of fabric.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
and
so
then he
do
would
you make
just
them out
draw.
in a couple different sizes, or do you just make one?
Mostly it was just one size. Um, Actually, what I did was my mom got really excited about this all. She loves to sew as well. So she doesn't live right here, but I would send the pattern to her and she would sew it up for me. And
Oh,
we worked
wow.
together that way. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sending out patterns here to everybody that I know that sews. Make me a dress. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. All right,
Yeah.
so I have some questions about sewing because in the back of my mind, I know in the back of my mind what happened when I sewed. Now, my mother was a seamstress and my grandmother was a seamstress, and so growing up in a large family, I'm one of 19, and my mother was the second oldest of 16. And so we made a lot of homemade clothing because it was out of necessity. At the
Mhm.
time, we could not afford clothing. And I don't know, fabric was maybe cheaper and we could buy bolts of fabric. So, I mean, we bought some ugly fabric, no lie. But then we made some, inexpensive clothing. And then my mother was one of those mothers that made like everybody in the family matching clothes.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever seen those where like the whole family is
Yeah.
everybody's wearing the same shirt or whatever,
Yeah.
different sizes? Okay, that was us. And then if we went somewhere like to an amusement park, she'd look for the shirt, and then, oh, those are all my kids right there. So
Mhm.
there were bolts of fabric and they were stashed in lots of different places around the house. And we had bolts of fabric kind of like wherever they would fit. There were sewing bobbins that would pop up in like every drawer of the house. There would be sewing scissors, and then there would be like household paper scissors. And of course, we weren't allowed to use the metal sewing scissors, but there was kind of like sewing stuff strewn all over our house. And then growing up, I replicated what I knew. And so there was sewing stuff strewn all over my house. Tell me
Mhm.
about your house and your setup and how it works in your situation.
Yeah, so I just have one daughter, so we don't need quite that many bolts of fabric, right? Um, and I have done a lot of saving, but um, when I came upon this idea of decluttering. It was just like, okay, reality is that I'm not using this fabric and I'm not going to use it anytime soon. And so I just started getting rid of it because it was um yeah, like, so I like to sew quilts and do that kind of crafty stuff. But then when I started this business, it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to just focus on dresses. I can't try and do both of these at once.
Hmm.
So I guess, yeah, that's where, like, I do like to be organized and that kind of thing. So it wasn't hard for me to just start getting rid of stuff and say, hey, this is gonna have to, if I get into it again, then we can get more stuff later, kind of thing.
Now, that's a question that I'm going to ask because there are a lot of people that don't have that discipline. And that takes a lot of discipline. What you did, where you said, I'm not doing quilts right now, I'm doing dresses. And to be
Hmm.
very specific and to hone it in on that particular thing. Lots of people don't have that discipline. What advice would you give them to get to a point that's closer to where you are, where they're like, hey, I'm not going to do that anytime soon. And the world has more fabric if I need it?
Hmm. Um, well, I like the thought of just like what part of the hobby or what area is like makes you the most enthused or the most excited. Um, and then to just just focus in on that one and because if that's the one that makes you the happiest, then that's what you can go for, and that's what you can just focus on that.
So when you come to fabric, and I know for me, every piece of fabric to me was a possibility. I would see
Hmm.
something and say, oh, I can make this out of that. And I didn't have the discipline to say I'm only making dresses. And so every piece of fabric to me represented a project of my creativity. And so, what would you say to people who already have gobs of fabric, bolts of fabric? Maybe they got a storage unit full of fabric and bobbins and thread and different, elastic and, you know, all the different stuff. What would you say to people that already have that and know that they need to probably scale some of that back?
Hmm. Um, well, one thing is like if yeah, like if they're wanting to scale back and to get rid of something, get rid of some of that, um, that like their stuff can also make somebody else happy by having it, to give it away or use it as gifts or things like that to help make somebody else happy.
I love that idea. I know that I had to have that honest conversation with myself, and I had to get rid of a lot of the fabric because the older I got, the more my priorities changed. I didn't love sewing any less, and it didn't negate that part of my life. I still
Mhm.
love to sew. To this day, I love to sew, right? And so, if you leave me alone right now and time is no object and I'm completely by myself, I don't go sit at my sewing machine anymore. I go and I sit at the computer and I write books. And so for me, my priorities and my interests have shifted. And you just made a
Mhm.
really interesting point about what are you most enthused about. And because
Mhm.
I have commitments and I have deadlines and I have other things I'm working on, as much as I love to sew, and I want to highlight the fact that I still love to sew. Okay, and
Mhm.
every piece of fabric to me still represents opportunity and missed craft projects. But because that's not where my focus is right now, and like you said, into the future, for the next 3 or 4 years, am I going to sew? The answer is no, absolutely not. That is not going to happen. If I have any free time, I have other commitments right now that I've already made commitments to.
Mhm.
And so letting go of that fabric was, I don't know, a hole in my heart. I was
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna let it go, but here's
Yeah.
the reason why. I don't want to store it. And storing it and keeping old fabric is not going to make it be any more fashionable unless I hang on to it for another 30 years or
Yeah.
something. So,
Yeah, and the other thing too is like um so I like to listen to the Minimal Mom,
mhm.
and she talks about all this stuff as being something that being like inventory, and we have to keep track of it. We have to make sure it's where it should be, and we have to take care of it. And if I'm overwhelmed, if this all this stuff makes me overwhelmed, and I would actually feel free and lighter just because it's gone, then that freedom of mind to me is far more important than the fact that this fabric could make cool things.
So were you always in a place where you were very niche oriented and you just had like minimal fabric, or did you at one point have more fabric and then you got rid of some of it?
Yeah, no, I did have more, and it would just sit there and sit there, and I never did make anything out of it. And
And
then, yeah,
how did it make you feel when you walked by and you looked at the fabric you hadn't sewn yet?
like it was just like, oh man, like I can never get to this, and like be discouraged because like I'll never have time for this. I have way too many other things to do. Yeah, it was very discouraging. And when I realized that, hey, if I got rid of it, that would actually be a weight off my shoulders, even though I'd love to do it still, but now is not the time. Obviously, I'm not getting to it, so I may as well just get rid of it because it's just a weight.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Right now, your office, your home office, this happy place that you're in right now. This
hmm
is a tell me about that and tell me how it fits in with the overall big picture of the family life.
Um,
Is this a bedroom that has been renovated, or is this something else?
no, so this is in our shop. We have a nice sized shop on our yard, and this is like the upper floor. There's 2 floors on it. Um, so this was, first of all, it was just a big open space. And when I started working with eCreate Stitches, then my husband and I were both working up here. And eventually we decided that we needed some walls between us so that we could focus and concentrate on what we were doing. So we just put up some temporary walls, and yeah, now I have my own little space here with my sewing machine and computer, and this is where I can come, and all I'm doing is either I'm sewing or at my computer, and I'm not doing laundry in between. I'm not cooking or nothing. I'm just here to do this.
I love that. Did you
Yeah.
find that by isolating the office, which is your work, this is your job, this is your business, by isolating that from the rest of the house, that it allowed you a different headspace when you would go into your office and you're like, okay, I'm not focused on doing my laundry and stuff right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It makes a big difference. I think that's partly why it is my happy place, because my mind is not full of all those other things that could and should be done in the house. Yeah.
So when you go to work, what happens to the house? And
Um,
go ahead.
well, I like during now it's the school hasn't quite started for our kids yet, but during school and school hours, I do have a routine that I have everything tidied up and floors vacuumed before I leave the house.
And
And
so this is
then
just like you're going to work for the day. You go out
yeah,
to
I
the
guess
back and you stay. Do you stay at work all day, or do you like go back to the house several times?
I go back for lunch and then I quit when my kids come home from school.
So you're really disciplined with your time. I mean, you're
During
not sneaking in
yeah.
to watch Netflix movies and stuff while you're supposed to be at work.
No, not really.
I love that. This is awesome. All right. So my question then is, when you have a home business, because I know a lot of people that we're working with right now have home businesses, and that's one of the reasons that they have extra clutter in their homes because they're working from home and I don't have time to go out. I will just have it drop shipped to my house. So they have packages from Walmart and Amazon and all the different places shipped to their home. And then when they do go out, it's usually just to go out and run a couple of quick errands. And when they get home, of course, they're always at home. So there's no like, oh, let me hurry and tidy up the house right now. It's like, hey, I'm home all the time, I can just do it whenever, and then they don't really whenever get around to it, right?
Mhm.
So how do you keep organized in the midst of two people that work from home, that run their businesses from home?
Well, I guess to me, like I I've kind of created like a system for myself of just like these are the things I do when I get up. These are the things that I like for sure when my kids go to school during the holidays it gets a little unorganized. But
Mhm.
I think that even having a system during school helps when there is no school just because you can't help but keep on with your system. And just I don't know, just having routines that are not binding, but that you eventually become kind of like a habit, that you just kind of do it without thinking.
So walk us through just a typical day. So you get up at what time in the morning? What does the first part of that system look like?
Usually between 5:30 and 6, I would get up and just get dressed, make the bed, start a load of laundry, and make breakfast and get the kids off to school. That was kind of that's the main morning. And then after that, then it's, yeah, office hours and stuff.
And then what happens after school?
Well, and then I go pick up my kids from school and they have a snack and kind of do their own thing for a while. And then it's time to do a few things in the house and make supper and yeah.
All right. So then during the day, during the business hours, that's when you're doing the craft projects that are your business. Your business are
Mhm.
the crafts. All right. So is it hard to separate the craft part from the business part? Because a lot of times when people have crafts, they're like in a zone and they're not thinking in business terms, like, oh, hey, this is for my business. They're thinking in terms of, oh, yay, I'm doing a hobby.
Um, well, the sewing and the business are all kind of pretty well connected. It's kind of a yeah, it's all connected together. So it's all to me, it's all fun. Like this business is there's things that I maybe don't enjoy as much as other things, but it's all enjoyable for me. Like I don't really hate any part of it.
I love that.
So
I'm telling you, when I grow up, I'm going to be you. That's everything I wanted to do, and I love the fact that you got a shop on the outskirts of your property where you can like leave, and you got a 1 minute commute, and there you are. I just
yeah.
think that's amazing. Wow. All right, so let's talk for a second about how you organized this space because at some point in your journey, whether it was during the process of having the kids or maybe when the kids got a little older, you decided I need a place of my own. Let me move out to the shed. And so what did that look like as far as setting up your happy place where you then had a place for your sewing and a place for your fabric and I'm guessing everything that you need for your sewing is there in the shop.
Mhm. So when we decided to like do this selling patterns and stuff, I had actually moved my sewing out here just to be with my husband because he was in his working in his office out here. I was like, well, I'll just move it out here and then I can sew and be close, you know. And so it kind of started like that, and then I started selling, doing more of the pattern thing, and yeah, and then it just kind of evolved into what it is now.
So is there ever a time when maybe you did or did not have enough room for your stuff and you had stuff in two places, three places? Was it always I just have enough space right now for my fabric? How did that work for you as far as making a space for the crafts and your business stuff?
Yeah, I've had my sewing in several different places. Like I did have it in a little room in our house. Um, it was quite little, and I did still have to store fabric other places too. And I still actually have a bit of fabric in the house as well. Um, yeah, so I store most of my fabric is here in the office.
And so is there are you just only using what you have now? Is there a chance that you would go buy new fabric? Like what is the turnaround for your type of business? Because I mean, every time I would go into a store, if I saw fabric, I was like glue. It just like sucked me in, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh my gosh, that's a really pretty piece of fabric that I don't have yet."
Well, I guess the for me, the lucky thing is that I don't have fabric stores very close by. So
Ah,
either I'm buying online or when I go to the fabric store 2.5 hours away. So I
ah.
guess, yeah, I do have quite a stash right now, and I guess maybe because I'm limited on space, I I just figured, hey, I'll have to use what I have now and then buy again when I need more, I guess.
So tell me about the patterns. So you make original patterns. This is what you do now. You sell patterns.
Yes.
Okay, so where do you sell them?
So it's all mostly it's digital patterns, so people
Uh-huh.
can just print them from home.
How do you
And
how do you print a digital pattern from home? Like how I'm thinking
yep,
old-fashioned patterns that you lay on the table and they're big.
so you print them on your regular computer paper, 8.5 by 11, and then tape the pages together. It's all in order. They all have numbers. They're all numbered. You tape those all together, and there's your pattern.
Huh. That's really interesting. I
Yeah.
never thought of that. Okay.
So yeah, and then you can also I also sell like printed ones. We just get them printed as they get as somebody purchases,
Uh-huh.
and then it gets shipped to their house, and then
So like
that's the
print
whole
on demand patterns.
hmm Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
I did not know that was a thing. Do you know
Well,
what? Do you go ahead.
I don't know if it is a thing, but that's how we do it.
Well, I love that for this reason. I mean, like every time that we create something in our society, especially like with printing patterns, there's a print cost and there's a labor cost and there's a press cost and there's a paper cost and a packaging cost. And then there's a stashing, storing, inventory, and marketing cost. There's a whole lot going on there. And so
hmm
if you are doing print on demand and you had a pattern, nobody's going to all that work and that labor unless a sale has been made. So I
hmm
love that. And
Yeah.
then what you just said about taping the pages together, I mean, I didn't think about it, but how inventive is that? Because then you're only using the paper that you need for the specific pattern you're creating. And I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many patterns I've bought over the years, and they're expensive. I mean, like the cheapest ones now are like $9 or $10,
hmm
just for a single pattern. And so if you're going to make it, that's awesome. But if you're not going to make it, and you're just buying the pattern because it looks cool on the picture, which I'm guilty of doing, right?
Yeah.
If you're watching this and you ever purchased a pattern just because you thought it was cool and you thought you were going to make it, but you didn't, leave me a comment in the notes. I wonder if I'm the only one that ever did that. And while we're here, I want to say hi to our buddies here. We got lots of buddies here. Arash, he says hi and welcome. And then we got Muppet 929 that gave us some smileys. Hi guys, good to see you guys. We already said hi to Priscilla. Priscilla, good to see you here. I'm um I'm curious, what are some of the lessons that you've learned being in business for yourself and knowing that you had to live a clutter-free life in order to maintain your creativity and keep on focus?
Oh, I know I've learned a lot, but just to point some things out, I guess maybe I've learned a lot about myself and what I can um yeah, like so when I was like really low and I knew I needed to make some changes so that I could actually cope and keep up. Um I was watching a video and this lady was talking about getting a routine. And like that just clicked with me because here I thought I needed to have like schedules and things written out so that I would like stay organized, and I knew they didn't work for me. Like, I knew that having a schedule that I had to stick to just wasn't, it didn't make sense in my brain. And so this routine thing, for some reason, it just clicked. And so that's one thing I've learned is that there's so many different ways of looking at things and of doing things, that I need to find like my own, to where it makes sense for me and for my brain.
So
I guess,
when you try a routine, do you just do the same thing over and over and over every day? And then if it's not working, you just tweak one of the things that you're doing until it kind of fits in and it's more organic?
yeah, yeah, basically. And you kind of like, I kind of went through it and like, what am I already doing? And realizing, okay, that is actually a routine that I have that I didn't know I had. And then it's like, okay, well, I can do this then. Like, it kind of empowered me to just like, okay, I'll just make a routine for this part of my day so that it can go smoother for me.
Well, and running a family of 5 kids, I know that there have to be routines in place in order for everybody to get fed and take their baths and get off to school and, all the things. I mean, there have to be routines. There just have to
Yeah.
be. So I love the fact that in the midst of all of that, you found a way to carve out some time to run a business as well. That's really empowering.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, really, because it's not like it was a huge dream of mine, but it just kind of just started to work, started to fall into place.
So what advice would you give to a small business owner? Maybe they're not a seamstress, but they are working out of their house and they're trying to put their routines together. What advice would you give them as far as either sticking with a routine that's not working or trying to change it up?
Um, yeah, I guess to like explore the different options or different um like goals that they have. Is like, what are they hoping to what are they hoping to gain, or what are they hoping to keep in order? I'm trying to make this make sense.
Well, that did make a lot of sense, and that's really important because a lot of people get up and they go through their day kind of drifting aimlessly, and there is no question about what does the end of my day look like. At the end of my day, what did I hope I accomplished? And I love that
Mhm,
you brought that up because if you start your day with the end in mind and you say, "Hey, by the end of today, here's what I must get done," you can kind of work your way backwards and know that this has to happen and this has to happen, and just like getting the kids out the door to school, you know that before
mhm,
that happens, they've got to have their homework, they've got to be dressed, they've got to have food. If they're taking lunch, they got to have their lunches. You know that when they get home, there's a certain series of things that have to happen. Like they're going to
mhm.
want to eat again. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
so I love that. That's really important to begin with the end in mind. During the day, let's say that somebody gets sidetracked. What do you do? And you specifically have moved outside to a shop on the outskirts of your property where you said, "I'm not distracted to go do my laundry." What happens
Mhm.
to the people that are working inside the house and they are distracted and they wander through the kitchen and they just randomly, aimlessly open up the fridge looking for new treats? They're distracted by anything that is happening in the house while they're there.
I guess, like, to me, like a list, like a to-do list that is very simple, like has very few tasks on it so that it's manageable. I think that could really help to just keep them motivated. And that's also the beauty of the routines, is that some of these things can actually get done throughout the routine so that it's not as much of a distraction.
Mhm. So would you suggest, and I'm throwing this out there, so correct me if I'm right or wrong, but would you suggest being a mother that you build the distractions into the routine? like, dinner has to be fixed at a certain time. So maybe during the day at a certain time, you run in and you throw some stuff in the crock pot, and that is part of the routine, meaning that there will be dinner tonight. And so while it seems like it's a distraction, it's actually part of the routine in order to get from point A to point B through the end of the day.
Yes. Yeah. Like part of my routine has also been to make like a simple menu for the week so that I know what I'm going to be making for meals. And then that way, that's not a distraction to me either all day long because I already know in the morning what I'm going to be making at night for the meal. And then that way it isn't a distraction anymore. It's not taking any space in my brain of, okay, what am I going to make? What am I going to
Right.
make? And yeah.
So you've kept the decision simple. And I hear this throughout everything that you've said so far. I decided that I was going to only create dresses. And so I let the quilting go. And now I'm deciding that this is what I'm going to fix for the entire week. Therefore, I'm not going to be distracted by other meals and other options and trying to figure out and reinvent the wheel at every meal. This is the menu. This is the schedule. I love that. That's keeping it really simple.
Yeah, that's kind of my main theme is to keep it simple. That's why there's not a lot of things on the to-do list and all that, right? Just to keep it from being overwhelming.
There you go. All right. So I have to ask about the scraps of fabric. When you cut a sewing pattern, usually there are little pieces that you can't use, and you end up with scraps. And it's hard for me to throw scraps away because, of course, like you said, I can make them into a quilt, right? How do you get rid of the excess stuff that you don't use in the scope of your project?
Well, I've started to buy, like when I buy fabric like for a dress, I'll buy a little bit extra so that if I need to like test a pattern to see if it's actually gonna fit, I have that extra bit I can use for like a bodice or part of the dress. And then that way I am not using up new fabric for my tests and I'm using my scraps. Otherwise, I like to keep the scraps for as long as I have my dress. Just in case something happens to the dress, I can maybe possibly fix it with the leftover material. And then
So keeping it as long as you're wearing the dress.
as long as I have as long as I'm wearing the dress, like once I have to throw it away or whatever, once it's done, then that's as long as I keep the scraps.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
And otherwise, like my daughter loves to make all kinds of who knows what out of scraps, so there's always that too. She uses them up.
Okay. So how do we keep our craft rooms organized? Because many people whose homes I've been in, it's a hot mess. I'm telling you, it's a hot mess.
Well, I love organizing, so to me, like that would be fun. I would I like to keep my scraps like the different types of fabric. Like if I have knit fabrics, I'll keep them all in the same place. And I'll even like organize them by their size. Like if they're big enough to try like to test out a pattern, I'll have those separately. Um, yeah. Otherwise,
So
like
threads.
to me, yeah.
Where is all your thread kept? How do you keep your thread? Is it
I
just
don't actually have a lot of thread. I guess I like to keep that simple as well and not have tons of thread. But if I'm sewing like a test dress or something, if I'm doing some testing or something like that, I'll just use up my random thread so that it gets used up. That's how I like
okay?
to, yeah.
And
But it doesn't
do you
matter.
typically make clothes all in the same color scheme so that you have limited amounts of thread, or do you just go wild and crazy and you got yellow thread on a blue shirt? Or
No, if it matters, I will match it. But if I'm not doing any like top stitching or things like that, then if I can get by with white or black or gray or something, I will.
So just conservative choices.
I guess.
I
I
love
don't like
that.
a lot of extras.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from your whole vibe is just a minimalistic approach.
Yeah, I guess so. I just found that all that stuff just weighed me down. It just gets so overwhelming so quickly, and I just don't like that feeling.
Have you ever been in a place where you had that feeling?
Yeah.
And what did you do?
If I'm overwhelmed, I kind of just shut down and nothing happens. Then like I just don't do anything because it's just too you don't know where to start.
And so does that mean that no sewing happens?
That means that nothing happens pretty well. Just
Nothing.
the basics.
Just across the board.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing that you bring up because that's a lot of people. A lot of people get really overwhelmed and they go into freeze mode. They just kind of freeze,
Mhm.
like, hey, wait a second. If I just stop and stand still and kind of look around, maybe it will come to me what I'm supposed to do next.
Mhm.
And because making decisions is overwhelming, I love the fact that you have simple routines for everything that you're doing because then you can go on autopilot and without
Mhm.
sitting there and trying to reinvent every single day because that is exhausting. Not to mention that you got 5 kids you're responsible for. That's exhausting too. And you're running a business. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? By having all those choices simplified and having a menu and having checklists and then having a special space. And I love the fact that you have a special space. Hey, I'm going to work now. And you've
Mhm.
decided that for me, in order for me to function and be advantageous to my customers, my clients, and myself, I'm going to leave my house at a certain time and I'm going to walk out to the shop and I'm not coming back in until it's either lunchtime or until my kids get off, the bus for school.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and and to me like when I am overwhelmed, I know that like I need to feed my family and make sure they have clean clothes to wear. That's my main thing. If I can at least do that, then I'm doing good. Then the rest it doesn't in a way it doesn't matter because as long as everybody's fed and clothed, then we're good.
Then you did your job for the day.
Yeah.
There you go. That's awesome. We got a couple questions here, and I want to throw this up here. Marina G says, "I'm not a sewer, but I love looking at patterns, and they tempt me to buy them." Ah, we're twins. She said, "I did buy one years ago, and I tried to make a skirt, but never properly finished it. This gal is amazing and inspiring." Yes, that's true. I'm going to second that. That's absolutely true. And then she says, "I can identify with a lot of this. I want to be her when I grow up too." Yay! That's two of us. She says, "I'm definitely in freeze mode because I have too much stuff and I am overwhelmed. Thank you for having her on." So I want to say thank you. Thank you for Marina for the comments and thank you for
Okay.
sharing that with us. It is standard that when we as humans are full of too much stuff, that we do go into freeze mode and we get paralyzed because we don't want to make a wrong choice and we do love our families and we want to do the best by them and do what's right by them. And so
Mhm.
we don't want to screw up and we don't want to do the wrong stuff. Therefore, we do nothing. And oftentimes it's damaging to us because in the freeze mode, excuse me, when we're not doing anything specifically, it's not like, hi, I'm taking a little break and my body is healing itself while I'm having this little break. We get down on ourselves and we get discouraged and we're like, man, look at me now. I should have done a whole bunch of stuff today and I got nothing done and it's already 6 o'clock at night. And we start feeling bad and making ourselves feel guilty. And if I've heard one thing from Cheryl today, the thing that I've heard today that I really want to highlight and I want to hit this home is that you need to be kind to yourself. And that starts with creating a plan for yourself. What does your business look like or what does your day look like? And create a plan. And what does the end look like? How will you know when this is finished? And then create a space. Hers is a happy place that's on the outskirts of her house. And she leaves the house every day at a certain time. And if you don't leave your house at a certain time, what does that look like for you? Now, I work out of my house as well, but it's inside my house. I don't have a shop. But what I do every morning is one of my routines. is I pack my husband's lunch every morning because I kick him out of the house and he goes to another job, but I pack my own lunch at the same time. And I carry my lunch with me up the stairs to, it's the bonus room of our house, but that's my office. And so, because that's my office, I'm not going to leave and keep going down to the fridge and doing other things, because I also will be distracted by the other things that have to be done. And so, in order for me to get my work done, I will stop, and I got the little Fitbit on. So every hour it's going to like, hey, move around. So on the moving around, that's when I do my distractive stuff. And like Cheryl said, having the distractions baked in as part of the routine, beautiful, beautiful, because I have to do the same thing to stay on track. And so for me, on one of those little breaks, I'm going to get up and I'm going to make 250 steps because my watch told me to. I'm going to run, go rotate the laundry. On the next time, I'm going to run, go put some stuff in the crock pot. On the next one, I'm going to run outside and check the mail. On the next one, I'm going to, whatever it is that I have to do, little tiny miniature tasks that last about 2.5 minutes. And in the process of doing those little tiny mini tasks, I'm going to get my steps in because I'm supposed to move around to get my exercise. I'm going to grab a drink. I'm going to run to the bathroom. So then when I come back, I can refocus for another whole hour without any interruptions, until the next time it's like, okay, hey, it's time for me to have a little break. I'm going to run, go stretch my legs and do the things, right? And so because I know that I'm going to have a little break coming up again in a few minutes, that gives me the freedom right now to sit there and go ahead and get what I'm supposed to be doing and really focus for the next hour on my tasks or my job or my business, so that all the little stuff still gets done. And it's going to take me all day to do it, but I'm going to have little breaks throughout the day, right? So I love this conversation. This is really inspiring to me as well. All right, now tell our listeners about your free pattern. Where can they go to find your free patterns, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so just go to ecreatestitches.com/pattern, and that's where they can get the free pattern. You can just download it from their email. They'll get it through the email, and just download it and print straight from home.
And what kind of pattern is this? This pattern makes
it makes a dress, a very simple dress. So it's got like 5 pieces to it. So very simple dress. Anybody can sew it, really. And then yeah, it's for knit fabrics, so that makes it easy as well, because it has more give that way. And yeah.
Is it a one size fits all?
No, the pattern has 6 sizes, so from extra small to 2x large.
Okay.
So it's included in the pattern, so then you can just choose which size fits your measurements.
And you made this particular pattern. You started making dresses because you wear dresses every day.
Yes.
And I remember thinking to myself when I found this out, oh, my mother would love you, because she thinks that all girls should be in dresses because that's what they're supposed to be doing. And I gave up and I wore pants a long time ago. But tell me, because you wear dresses every day, is it hard to find dresses that fit your style, that fit your and I would imagine, being a mom of 5 kids, you got a lot of stuff going on. You got to move in and it's got to fit you right.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, okay, what was your question again?
I'm just saying, I think it would be hard to find dresses that fit your lifestyle. And so therefore you created them. You're like, hey, they don't exist, I'm going to make them.
Yes. Yeah, that is the thing. It's hard to find dresses that, like, I like them to be long enough. I don't like the necklines to be too big, and it's just, I don't know. It's hard to find dresses that really just fit what I'm looking for. So.
Well, and a lot of the dresses are for special occasions. Like you see a dress and you're like, oh, that's really awesome. But like half of it has glitter on it. And you're like, yeah, I'm not going to wear that every day. That's not.
No, exactly.
I love this. I love this. I love what you've created for yourself. And I have to say that I'm really proud of you. You've worked through some really interesting lessons, and you've come out on top. You got a business, you got a beautiful family. And I'm so proud of you. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing this with us today. I'm going to leave links in the notes as well to your ecreatestitches.com pattern. I hope you guys, if you're not seamstresses, I hope you guys reach out to friends of yours that are, and make sure they get a free pattern, because I think that it would be awesome if Cheryl's dresses were made. I think that would be so awesome. So you guys stay in touch. Thanks again, Cheryl, for joining us today. This was really great. I appreciate all of you that joined us here. Thank you for your comments and for tuning in. And we will see you guys same time, same place next week.